Thank you so much for coming to listen to this talk. I know there's quite a number of other good events on at the moment. They all sound really interesting, so thanks again for just coming to this talk in particular, and hopefully you'll find it interesting, and yeah, I hope you take something away from it. And also, obviously, thanks to GeeCON as well. You know, amazing city, amazing conference. Just really, really excited to be here, and really, really happy. So, thank you for that. So, who am I? My name is Sebastian Carroll, and I'm a senior consultant at Hortonworks. Hortonworks is one of the major players in the big data space, and our fully open source solution is something that we're very proud of. So everything we support is fully open source, including Apache NiFi. So if you want to play around with this, and I suggest that, and I hope that you will, after the talk, you can just go to the website, which I have at the end, and yeah, download, play around with that, and see how you like it. So this is my email, you can get me there. This is my Twitter handle, of course, you can get me there as well. And yeah, I'm on Twitter a bit. I'd really appreciate it if you did tweet me, especially with the #GeeCON as well. That would be really cool. I'd be really excited to see that. So if you are on Twitter and you do want to do that, I really encourage you to tweet me that address there. So before Hortonworks, I was working in defense and government. That's my background. And I have my NASA t-shirt on today, but unfortunately haven't actually done any work with NASA. I'm from Australia. We don't have our own space agency yet, but I'm very excited that we should get one in the near future, so that should be quite exciting. So on that point, has anyone actually been to Australia? Has anyone travelled there? No? No? Okay. Would anyone like to go? Yes, okay, good. Great. Yeah, I do encourage you to go. It's an amazing country. But one of the things we're really well known for is just being huge, right? So I just have a little quick side point here, just to sort of put it into perspective. I hope you find this interesting. So this is Australia here, and I've overlaid a country in the middle here. So can anyone guess which country this might be? The little pink bit. Yes. So Germany's not a small country, right? It's quite big. But you can fit 22 of them in Australia. So yeah, if you do go to Australia, just don't get lost. It's a long walk. And there's not many people. There's only 25 million. So back to the interesting part. Hopefully. So what is Apache NiFi? Has anyone heard of Apache NiFi? A couple? Anyone used it? No, sort of. Okay. Okay, great. So it's fairly new in the open source world. I think it was about 2014 that it was open sourced. But it's actually quite mature. So it was developed in the NSA since about 2003. So it's actually had about a decade and a half of development and being used in production, large-scale systems, you know, I don't know exactly what, obviously, but probably lots and lots of data flowing all over the world. And that's really its main use case. That's what it was designed for. That's what it's optimized for, is that movement of data. You know, that easy getting data from A to B and not really having to worry too much about the details, not having to like code so much, which I know a lot of people are probably like, well, I'm not so sure about that, you know, where's the code? But I hope that I can convince you that this will actually allow you not have to worry about those details, so you can do something a bit more interesting. So another geography question. Does anyone know where this is? Yes, Niagara Falls. And to me, this kind of, again, visually sort of puts into perspective what NiFi kind of does. So if you think of the little bits of water here, the water droplets, if you think of those as bits of data instead, files and whatever you might be transporting, you can see like there's a big stream here down the bottom, and it kind of like combines here and then splits upstream, and you can sort of visually see where it's going, and you can sort of see that you don't need to know really much about the details. You can sort of see generally where it ends up. And this is actually where NiFi gets its name from. So it was originally called Niagara Files, as a fairly average pun, but that was quite long to type, so it just became NiFi, which is much easier to say, much easier to type, but you also lose that that minor bit of humor. And this is the logo here, this little droplet with the other droplets coming in the side here. So I think that kind of puts a little bit into perspective. So just a bit more about the sort of data flow side of things. So if anyone's worked on sort of data flow systems before or moving data around, I know I definitely did this when I first got into this area. The grey boxes there, they're fairly well defined. We kind of know where we want to store it generally. Obviously there's some arguments about Cassandra and Mongo and all sorts of other things, but generally you sort of know that you want to store it, process it, or acquire it in some way. But the actual movement part, that often gets kind of left out, right? Like you kind of think, and again, I know I did this, I'll just write a Python script, it'll be fine. And it's fine until it's not fine. And something breaks, and then you have to go and pick up the pieces, and you think, oh, I can extend this, and I can do a bit of processing, and but then, again, speaking from experience, the machine crashes, and it's halfway through processing something, and you have to go and pick everything up again. So for minor solutions, that might be okay, but for a general solution, it becomes a lot more difficult. So some of the complexity here, you can see there's this graphic here that I've sort of put up, which is, there's Australia down there. It often spread over geographical regions. Your links might be not reliable, might have different bandwidth considerations, different hardware considerations, different economic zones, different laws governing each of those zones. So in general, it can be quite difficult. And this is really where NiFi sort of sits. It gives you the flexibility and the agility, of course, given the name of the talk, to move this sort of stuff around in a general way. And so I mentioned that NiFi is kind of a code light or a code minimal solution. It's based on a UI, flow-based programming. You can visually see where this sort of stuff moves. It gives you a lot of visual aids. So why do you guys, mostly developers, I presume, why should you care about something like NiFi? This sounds like an ops tool at this point, right? And the reason why I like it and the reason why I use it is because it's easy enough to use that as developers, I can use it. I don't have to spend weeks training on something else or picking up a new framework or something. And it gives me the control over my own data. So when I sit in my team, we have a cross-functional team. Anyone in the project can use it. Anyone in our team can use it. Anyone can be in control of it. And that frees us up to do the more interesting things. So as I was saying, that's the analysis, that's actually deriving those results from your actual data, the interesting stuff, the models, the machine learning, the transformations, presentations, visualization, all that sort of stuff. So why is NiFi different? So I've sort of said data movement, and we've had a few different talks on data streams and moving data around, and there's a lot of solutions that I'm sure people can, rattle off the top of your head. So why is NiFi different from some of those other solutions out there? So these are sort of the four major, well, I don't want to call them competitors because some of them aren't, some of them do completely different things, but areas of sort of confusion, I would say, with where NiFi sits. And I also have MiNiFi here, which is our stripped down edge client, but essentially it's the same data movement tool. So the first one that I'm sure we're all aware of is processing frameworks. That's your Storm, Spark, Flink, etc., etc. So these pretty much don't compete with NiFi at all. Like, they have a very focused sort of use case, complex distributed processing, large scale, doing really, really big joins, really, really big, aggregations, that sort of thing. NiFi doesn't do that at all. It just moves the data around. So I've put here simple event processing, and by that I mean if you have some sort of file, like you pick up some sort of CSV or a log file, for example, all the information you need to do any sort of routing or transformation is in that file. You don't have to look at everything. You don't have to collect stuff. It can just make very quick decisions on what it has in front of us. And that allows you to be much more agile, as I was saying, about moving this stuff around. So it's much simpler. It simplifies that problem. And then it feeds a lot of those distributed processing frameworks. So they work hand in hand. The messaging bus services like Kafka, JMS, those sort of things, they also have their own sort of focus, which is passing messages. And they do that really well. And NiFi can kind of do that. It definitely does do that, but it's not its main focus. Its main focus is on its fast feedback, fast changes. You can visually see where this is going. It has a lot of lineage tracking and all those sort of things. The integration ingestion frameworks like Camel, Flume, and Scoop, for example, in the big data world, very developer facing, very much focused on ingest. So especially something like Scoop, it's just getting it from your RDMS into Hadoop, and that it does that very well. It does that at scale, but NiFi is much more flexible. So it can kind of do that as well, but you won't get the distribution on something like Yarn. You won't be able to use all your machines, but it will be able to do it in a much more easy to set up, easy use. Anyone on the team can do it. You don't have to be a developer. And finally, the ETL set. So Informatica, Ab Initio, that sort of stuff. And again, they have their own sort of bit where they sit. So they're sort of more focused around the data warehousing side of things, and often very schema dependent. You have to do a lot of modeling up front, maintain those schemas and that sort of thing. But they do that very, very well. They're very performant, and NiFi is not like that. It is schema independent. So if you have a single flow, that could be anything. That could be text files, that could be audio, PDFs, whatever. It doesn't have to know that schema. And a lot of people sort of say, oh, but my schema is really important. And it may be, but it's not necessarily important for just moving it around. It might be important for modeling and stuff. And sometimes you don't know what that is. It might be a corporate project where they have some giant XML something or other that someone's lost the actual definition for, or you can't find it, and no one really knows what's in there. So you don't necessarily want to model that up front. So that's one of my favorite things about NiFi, is it really helps you just get going quickly without having to worry about all that sort of modeling. But you can do it if you need to. So I'm a big fan of Agile. I assume everyone here is at least somewhat of a fan of Agile, given that it's in the topic talk. But I just wanted to quickly run through what I mean by Agile. I'm not necessarily talking Scrum. I'm not necessarily talking, the Scrum Master who just kind of hands out tasks to everyone, or the sprints that always run over, that sort of thing. I'm talking about just the actual principles and manifesto that underlie that sort of stuff. So I just want to quickly run through what I mean by those. So this is the Agile Manifesto, which I'm sure everyone's at least somewhat familiar with. And I just highlighted the two sections here that I think are really important. And that is responding to change. So I've mentioned a few times that NiFi can really help you like move that stuff around quickly and get it done in a fast way. And working software. So this is NiFi can help with the prototyping, but it can also help be that production system. So you don't have to then transition as you transition to a production flow. And this is a big wall of text with the principles, but again, I've just highlighted some of the areas that I think are important, and especially the simplicity one down the bottom there. So the art of maximizing the amount of work not done. Again, that comes into the schemaless part of it, comes into the easy to use UI, so you don't have to do a lot of training and that sort of thing. And I've just sort of simplified those down into the 4 key points that I think, NiFi really, really supports. I think this is really where it can help. And as I keep mentioning, some of the features that I think do that. So there's the schemaless, but schema if required, easy UI, and one thing I haven't mentioned is there's a lot of integration points. So you can very, very quickly spin up something from an FTP server, or you can listen TCP or anything that, most of those things are out of the box. I think there's about 250 or something in the last release. So a lot of that comes very, very quickly. So I have a short little demo, and yeah. So I just wanted to. This comes from a project that I was on actually. So this is somewhat of a true story, just recreated. And actually, we had installed a cluster, and we'd actually finished early, which like never happens. So the customer was very happy, and they said, "You got a few more days. We'd like to investigate this website data." So they had some clickstream data that they'd not really done anything with before. And they said to me, can we get this somewhere into the cluster where we can just look at it, analyze it, and see what's there? Because we also don't know what's there. We've just heard that it's a good idea, read about it on the internet or whatever. And so ordinarily, in a situation like that, if you want to get hold of that data from that enterprise like core system, it's omniture data, so controlled in some core team probably. You'd probably have to log a ticket to get it right. And everybody loves tickets, they you can type away, give all the details you need, they come back in like a week and you think, oh, that was quick, a week, that's pretty good. But then they say oh, you have to please include a business justification, and it takes forever. It really does sometimes. And so to avoid that, we were using NiFi, and we didn't have to go through that team. We could connect directly to where it was coming from, and we could quickly and easily just sort of bring that in and then analyze it and go from there. So if I just mirror this. So also running through this sort of demo, I know most people haven't seen or used NiFi before, so I'll just explain a little bit about the interface, but I won't have time to go through much really, just the bare bones. So this is the interface when you start it up. I'll just blow that up a bit. Okay. And so this bit here in the middle, this is the canvas. This is where things happen. And NiFi's concept of things happening has to do with processes. So the processes are the the construction parts of the flow, and they're the things that do things. They're the things that connect to other systems, and do that routing, do that configuration and stuff. So I can just drag and drop that onto here. And in the example I had, we just sort of picked these up from the system. So I can just use a get file. And yeah, so you can see there's 242 different things out of the box here. So before I do that, I'll just run through a couple of them because they are quite interesting, the scope of things that you can connect to. So there's an IMAP one, JMS, Kafka. What else we got here? There's you can Dynamo stuff. There's HDFS, XQuery transformations, email headers. You can do HTTP flows, get HTTP. You can handle the request. You can do all sorts of different things. So there's a lot of very general things you can do just by combining these tools together. So if I drop that get file, so I can drop that onto the canvas here. And I was saying a bit about that easy UI and that NiFi kind of helps you out and gives you that fast feedback, right? And so you can see visually here that if I mouse over this little exclamation mark here, you can see it's actually telling me exactly what I need to do to get this process started. So that's quite handy because a lot of times, you kind of just do something in code or whatever, and maybe it's not written that well, and it's hard to see where you've gone wrong. But NiFi tries to make that very, very easy for you. So you can see here we've got an input directory, so obviously it wants to know where we're picking those files up from, and relationship success is invalid. So the relationships, that is NiFi's connectors. So depending on this one only has a success because if it fails to pick something up, then yeah, it just fails. So it doesn't have an option, but some of the other ones have a success out and a failure out, and you can build your flows in that way. So you can handle failures very flexibly as well. So to create a connection, you can see I can just drag this little arrow bit here, but I have nothing to connect it to. But I also don't know what my data actually looks like. So we can just pick any old processor. So I can pick the update attribute, which I'll explain in a minute. And I can drag that down, and you can see again visually, it tells you when you've got the correct connection, turns green, etc. So again, it tries to help you out there. And if I mouse back over, you can see it's just the input directory. So I can right click or double click, and that'll bring up the configuration window. And there's a lot of things to set here, but the main one we're looking for is just the input directory, which I already have here. And the other thing we're looking for is this keep source files. So I don't want to delete them, I want to pick those up multiple times just because it's a demo. Ordinarily you'd probably want to remove those so you don't get data duplication, etc. And I can just start this guy and see what we get. So you can see there's lots and lots of things coming into this queue, and this has turned red here. So this is the back pressure kicking in, so it has automatic back pressure built into this, and you can set it either on size, so the one on the right here is the size limit, which obviously we're nowhere near, and the one on the left is the count limit. And you can see if your flow's stopped for some reason, you can see very quickly whether or not that's back pressure or something wrong with the actual flow itself. So the reason why that picked up so many, because I've currently got the scheduling set here, so this is going to run as fast as it possibly can. So we probably don't want that. I can just change that to something a lot slower. And in real time, I can just say, I just want to empty out that queue, which I know is safe here because I know I'm picking up the same files. And I can just try this again. And we can see we've just picked up the 5 files in that flow there. And I'll just stop that again to show that I don't want to pick all those files up. But now we can actually have a look. So now NiFi gives you the capability to, rather than empty the flow, we can have a list here and we can just see what's actually inside. And this is really cool because this is a flow that's running, and we can actually open this up and say, like, what's going on here, you know. And we can see we've got, you know, all these zip files. So we've, without having to do any modeling or anything like that, we can already have a quick look at what's in here and then make actions based on that. So we probably want to unzip these, right? Like, we don't know what's inside. The file name doesn't give us much information. So we can drag another processor on here and then just look for something to do with zip. So this one here is probably what we want, the unpack content. And we can drag that on like this. And we can just move this over here so we can, in real time, just rearrange this flow. So it's now going to the processor that we want it to go to. And again, that helps you build these things up quite quickly. So this is what I was saying about the different connections. So here we have failure, success, and original. And they're all here for you. So I just tick the failure one, and that goes into the side one here. So this also doesn't go anywhere, but I'm also not expecting any failures. And we can repeat this trick for connecting the success. Like that. And we still have this original one to move. So with this one, we don't really care because this is here so that you can actually do further processing if you want to. You might want to have a split where you unpack one and then put the originals to disk for further analysis or backup or whatever you want to do with it. But we don't want to do that, so I can just auto-terminate this. So anything that gets sent to that relationship will just get deleted. And we know this is zip, so we can just create a zip and apply that straight away and see what happens. We just do a refresh. Okay, so they all got successfully unzipped, which is good. And then we can view this again. So we can list this again and see what we get out of it. So again, the file names aren't very interesting. They're just a bunch of numbers. It doesn't really help us much. But we can actually pull this up, and not only can we see the details of the file, we can actually view it in NiFi's viewer online. So this is, now we can see, this is like a CSV probably. So in real time, we've now picked this up and can look at it. And if your flow was actually running at this point, you could then pick up anything. So if you got an error with the processing, went to a failure connection, you could see that and try and visually see why that may have gone there. And the concept of the flow file here, I said I was going to explain that. So you can see here that in NiFi's world, I talk a lot about the schemaless feature of NiFi. NiFi calls its bits of data a flow file. So a flow file is just made up of 2 parts. The first part is the attribute list, so that's just key value store of attributes on that piece of data. So we can see the absolute path that it was picked up from. We can see the creation time, etc., etc., etc. And then NiFi is very, very quick at making decisions on those, on that attribute list. So when I said the simple event transformation, if you're just doing it on this attribute, it's very, very fast. It doesn't even have to read the content and look at it. It can just make those decisions really, really quickly. And then the other side is just, as I showed there, just the content. So in this case, we know it's CSV because it looks like CSV to us, but it doesn't have to be. It could be anything. And NiFi would still treat that the same. So at this point, we have these running through here, and now we probably want to do something with them. So in the scenario, we could, in the case of trying to maximize the amount of work not done, we can just write these out somewhere and have a look at them. And then if we want to come back and update this flow later on, we can do that as well. But also we have the flexibility of using that schemaed processes now. Now that we know it's CSV, now we can convert that to something like Avro or ORC and stream that into Hive or do some further analysis on it. So if I just write these out here, so this is another put file. I can move that down like that, and then configure this just to write this into my Unzip directory here. So this is the directory where I want these to go, but this is obviously just local, but it could be, as I said, Hive, it could be streaming to Kafka or Storm or any other solution where you might want to analyze these files further on. And I've just removed those, terminated those endpoints because we don't need them once they've written out. And we can see they've all gone through here, and then they appear here. So that's just a very, very quick sort of workflow that you can build up. And this was, only took 10 minutes or so. And then this actually scales out as well. So you can cluster this up if you need to. You can give it more memory, you can do whatever you need to do to push this into production, and it'll work the same as it does here. So you're not throwing this stuff away. This isn't just a POC tool. This isn't something that's just designed to, quickly get this stuff going and then throw it away. You can actually build these flows and then, use them again. And anyone in the team can modify this if they need to, make changes, etc., etc. So another one of the cool things that comes out of the box here is this get Twitter processor. So someone created this get Twitter endpoint. So if, for example, you might want to do some sentiment analysis or whatever, but you can very, very quickly just sort of connect this processor up. You don't have to do any custom code or anything like that. And you can see I've had this one running here for a while, and we can also get a bit of a idea of how much data has come through. You can see the graphs in real time. So these are obviously very small amounts of data here. I'm only running this once every 5 minutes, I think. And then we can list this queue out, and we can see any of these sort of tweets here. So if we view this content here, we've got this one from Thorben Jansen. You're talking about GeeCON here and that sort of thing. So you might not know exactly what this endpoint returns, but you can very, very quickly just drag the processor down, connect it up very easily, and then very, very quickly have a look at what's going on in here and then make decisions based on that. So it really, really saves you that time, of having to know everything in advance. You can just quickly model these sorts of things. And then you can also very quickly just split these things off your mainstream So if I had something like update attribute from here, you could then have a stream to the right here doing some processing, and then you could do some stream to the left if that was where it was already going. So you could very easily just say, I'm just going to take a subset of this data, do some further analysis on it, see what I can change, and then cut over to that one if you need to later. So again, it really helps you like move quite quickly and be very flexible with that sort of thing. So I just wanted to quickly go over some of the key points. I think that, again, sort of emphasize NiFi and maybe the reasons why I think it's interesting and why I think you guys should have a look at it. So again, I went over these principles of Agile, and I think, again, these are the 3 points that I think are really, really important, especially the schemaless. I know I keep saying that, but I think that is really, really cool. You can just send whatever in there and then have a look later and then make those decisions. And just to round out, so I think, yeah, NiFi can really, really easily handle this data movement problem for you. And so you can just focus on something more interesting. And that's really what it's designed for. That's really what it is used for, and that's really what it does well. Okay, so we have a bit of time left. So does anyone have any questions? Anything you want to ask? Yes?
Okay, thank you for the talk. I was just curious, how do you store or version the definition of the data flow?
Mm-hmm. So NiFi has a concept of templating. Oops. So if I share my screen again. So if this was my Twitter template and I wanted to like, if I wanted to like keep that, I can select everything that I need there, and I can use this button down here to create a template. Twitter demo 1. And so then that's stored in the template, so you can up here, and then you can like keep the version of that in there. There's also an outside product that is offered by Hortonworks, which is our schema repo thing, so we can store those templates in there. And all the changes to the flow, there's also a backup directory as well. So on the file system, it keeps the state as it takes backups, and you can restore those as you need. And there's a lot of features for that sort of thing coming, being able to update these things in real time and share them between different systems as well.
Okay, I have a lot of questions actually, so
Okay.
I will stop by later. But maybe one of them, which is now interesting for me as well, how do you control access rights to different data sources?
So NiFi has quite a flexible access management model. So I haven't configured this one, so I can't actually show you, unfortunately. But it has a lot of different ways you can say, so this is a concept of a process group here, so I haven't shown process groups, but I've got a number of process groups here. They're sort of like a function. You can put all these different flows inside. You could, for example, restrict on each of these flow levels. So you could say someone's allowed to go into it, but they're not allowed to read the data. You could say they're allowed to go into it, but they're not allowed to make changes. They can see the data, but not make changes, and all those sort of things. So you can set this up in a multi-tenancy way, of course, where different teams have different access to different process groups, and then those teams themselves can configure and control who has access to that data inside the team. And then there's also the external parts of that. So you can obviously have the operations team who then control who then adds users and groups and all that sort of thing. So there's quite a good separation of concerns here. And it's a fairly flexible model as well. And it integrates with other products as well, such as Ranger and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Any more?
Well, I would like to ask if this cool graphical user interface is like the main topic on the Apache NiFi, or is there some under the hood APIs that we could use?
Mm-hmm. So you can hook into the REST API if you would like. So one of the things I didn't talk about with NiFi is all the help is always built into the application. So if you do start this Apache NiFi instance, you can just go up to the right here and go to help. And this will give you help on all of the different processes. And there should also be an API guide in here somewhere. Yes. So here's the API guide. You can access it with this /API, NiFi API instead of this /NiFi at the top here. And you can see if we have a look at, here's the access stuff. It gives you all of that sort of stuff. Process groups, etc., etc. Yeah, so that's how you interact directly with the API there. Do we have any more questions? Anything else? Yeah. For the UI, I'm not sure actually. Check it out on GitHub. You'll be able to see it there. Yep.
Can you show us or tell us craziest example of what can be doable?
Craziest example. I'm not sure any of the examples I have are actually crazy. So, because NiFi kind of fits in that, kind of boring space, really, like just moving stuff around. So I think one of the more interesting ones is I think a couple of people in the States have started writing their own processes for like deep learning stuff and integrating it with DL4j or something like that. So that's pretty interesting, but I don't know if that's any of that's actually been used in production. Done a lot of things with like the scripting processor. So there's a execute script processor in here, and you can just, in this case, Clojure or Ruby, whatever. So you can then use that model inside of there to quickly like build stuff up and just put the code in here, and then if you want to make it more resilient or into an actual processor later, you can do that as well. But in terms of craziness, I don't have any good examples, unfortunately. I'll make a note. Anything else? Nope. Okay, all right. I'll finish a bit early then. If you do have any other questions, feel free to come up and see me. Feel free to catch me if you're around for the rest of the day. And I'll just put this back up. Yeah, so that's my contact details, and there's the Apache NiFi website if you want to check it out, and I hope you do. Yeah, let me know if you do. Let me know if you like it. Let me know if you hate it. Let me know anything about it. I'm always interested. So, all right, thank you.